Thank you, Christina. Our next speaker is Vidya. The educator teaches at York University.
Thank you. So my name is Vidya Shah, and I've been an educator for the past 10 years. I currently teach at the Faculty of Education in York University in the Initial Teacher Education Program. And this is a very heated discussion, and I want to acknowledge York Region Parents Association and all of you for coming out and having this conversation, because I think it's fantastic that we are engaging in this dialogue, and I think it is what makes our country so beautiful. And I also want to acknowledge that I do think that the parent is the very first teacher of every child. I also want to say that I want to share with you sort of my experiences as an educator. And 10 years ago, if this curriculum would have come out, I would have been very concerned as a teacher as to how I would address these issues. I would have been scared, I think, in some ways to talk about these issues, because I would have had a fear that by talking about these issues, it would have made the issues worse. A couple of incidences, key incidences in my professional career have really changed my opinion, and I want to just share with you what these stories are. The first story is it was my very first week teaching. I was walking down the hall, and I apologize in advance because I'm going to share some graphic information, but it's important to highlight what's actually happening in some of our schools. I was walking down the hall at 4 p.m., not really many students in the hall. All of a sudden, I see a boy and a girl walk into the boys' bathroom. I thought, this is strange. And I'm a first-year teacher, very naive. I knock on the door. Hello, what's going on? What's happening in there? Excuse me, what's going on? And I walk in to see a young girl performing oral sex on a young boy. I was mortified, and I didn't know how to handle. Sorry, grade 7. So we called the students out. We had conversations with them. We had to involve parents. And in having these conversations, what we uncovered was it was not just these 2 students. It was happening across the entire school. And in fact, it was happening across many, many schools. After 10 years, I'm realizing how big this problem actually is. And what we noticed is that there is sexual activity happening that students don't actually think is sexual activity, because they think that unless they're having intercourse, if they're doing anything else, that's not considered any form of sexual behavior. There's a lot of incidences of sexual harassment and rape happening in our schools that we are unaware of because we are not talking about these issues. We have a number of incidences of students who believe that in order to fit in, they need to send the sexting messages to one another, because what one of the young girls said to me was, Ms. Shah, if I am protected by the boys in the school, they will help me from being bullied from the girls. So I need to do whatever they want me to do, whether it's sexual activities or sexting or whatever it is, I need to do those things in order to be protected from bullying in the school. I cannot tell you how much conversation needed to happen, and as a result of these conversations, the level of sexual activity happening in the school drastically reduced. The students said to me, Ms. Shah, we tried talking to our parents about this. It's uncomfortable. How do you talk to with these issues to your parents? We don't really know what to say. And many of them said to me that had they not had the conversations that we had together in our schools, that what would happen is that it could have gotten worse, meaning that it could have led to other forms of sexual activity. So this is just one example of what experiences that are happening in our school. I want to share with you another example, and it was of a young girl. She was in grade 8, beautiful young girl, very smart, very talented, very artistic, came from a fantastic home, great family values. She came up to me one day and she was bawling. And I said, what's wrong? What's happening? And she said, Ms. Shah, I have to tell you, I'm having these weird feelings. I think I might be a lesbian. I don't know what's happening. And I said, okay. I said, let's talk about this. And she is in tears. And I said, what's happening here? She said, Ms. Shah, I don't know how to make sense of this. I don't know what's happening in my head. I can't tell anyone. I'm scared that if I tell anyone, my parents are going to kick me out of the house. I'm not going to have any friends. She said, but because in your classes we talked about racism, and we talked about classism, and we talked about anti-homophobia, and we talked about different faiths and different beliefs, I felt that I could come and I could tell you this. And then she said to me that had she not had me to come to, she would have probably committed suicide. And I just want to make this really clear, because for many of these students, we are talking about life and death. And just for a moment, I want you to consider that this young girl was your daughter. This is a very serious topic that we're talking about. 33% of students that identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual attempt suicide, and 50% have thought about it. Those are staggering statistics. As an educator who cares about every single child in my classroom equally, I have to make sure that I am creating a safe space for children to talk about these issues. And when they come to me and they say, Ms. Shah, I can't talk about these issues with my community and at home with my parents, I need to make sure that I'm creating a safe space for them. Because if I don't, I'm part of the suicide problem. If I don't create a safe space for them to come and talk to me, I am actually part of that problem. And I can't let that sit on my conscience. And so I'm asking us today as a group, I know that this is a very sensitive topic for all of us, and I recognize that, but I'm asking us to consider how we can have these conversations to move forward. Abstinence is key. Having conversations with our children is key. But providing spaces for them to talk about things where they cannot talk to their parents or to other family members is also key. They need to have that safe space. Otherwise, incidences of rape, sexual harassment, suicide, that's what's at stake. We're talking about lives.
Thank you, Vidya. Our next speaker is Sotiropolous.
It's nice to talk about numbers. No more than 3% of students at Toronto District School Board identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual. So whatever the suicide rates are among those individuals, they are actually minimal in comparison to the suicide rates among non-LGBT students. If we're going to talk about numbers, let's talk about numbers. What are the bullying statistics? Well, the fact is, these are the facts according to the Toronto District School Board's own survey of students. 38% of students are bullied because of body image. They're skinny, they're obese, they don't like their hair color, or whatever the case might be. They have too many pimples. 17% are bullied because of grades or marks. 14% are bullied because of cultural background. 7% because of language. 4 to 6% based on gender. 5% based on religion. 5% on income. And a very small percentage, arguably 3 to 4% based on sexual orientation. And again, these are the numbers based on the Toronto District School Board's own survey of its students, 2011-2012. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about here is a sexualization of children in this curriculum. Nothing less than that. In my term as a trustee, I had 28 schools under my purview. Some school districts don't have 28 schools in them. I never once had a parent come to me, or a student for that matter, and ask for more sex education. It never happened. I had students and parents come to me and ask me for more intensive math, for more intensive English, for cursive writing, for everything but more sex education. It never happened. I have come into contact with pretty well every single culture that exists in this country. And not one single culture, not one single ethnic culture considers sex a recreational option. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this curriculum presents it only as a recreational option. It is completely devoid of any social or individual consequences, ladies and gentlemen. And think about that very carefully. This curriculum will bring, and has already brought, turmoil into your homes. This is personal, ladies and gentlemen. This is not some kind of abstract notion. Thirdly, there has been no parental consultation. None. Zero. A mockery of a consultation process, so-called, based on consulting 4,000 school chairs who weren't elected to represent parents, and in many cases were